Hey guys, welcome to the 58th C programming tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to be creating a few functions that will make generating random things a lot easier. And we're going to be creating these functions inside of a separate file. So the first thing that we need to do up here is just create a header file. So we're going to go up and say File, New, Empty File, click Yes to this, and I'm going to go ahead and call it random.h, and we need that .h extension because it's a header file. Alright, then I'm just going to go ahead and click Save right here and click OK to this so it'll add it to my project. And there's our header file right there. Alright, and now we just need to create a code file. So again, we go up to File, New, Empty File, click Yes, and I'm just going to call this random.c and click Save, OK, so it'll add it to my project. And there we go. So now I've got our code file and our header file right here. Alright, so just go over to the header file, and inside of this file we're going to be creating the prototypes for all of our functions. And we're going to be creating three functions. The first function that we're going to be creating is just called initRandom, and all that this function is going to do is basically to set up the seed for the random number generator. So it's going to have a return type of void, and we're just going to go ahead and call this function initRandom. Alright, and this function is just going to take no arguments, so we can just go ahead and leave it like that. Alright, and then the next function that we're going to be creating is just going to generate a random number in a user-defined range. So it's going to take two parameters, a minimum and a maximum, and this function is just going to return a random number in between that minimum and maximum. So it's going to return an integer. We're going to call it random number. And this function, like I said, is just going to take two parameters, the minimum, so min, and the maximum, int max. Alright, and finally we're going to be creating a function that is going to fill a string with random characters. So the return type is going to be void. We're going to call this random string, and this function is going to take two parameters. The first is just the string that we're going to be filling with random characters, so car star string. And then the second parameter is just how many characters inside of this string do we want to fill with random characters. So I'm just going to say int random car count. Alright, so now we're all done right here. We've got all of our function prototypes. So now we can go over to the code file. And before we start actually writing these functions, we just need to include a few things at the top right here. The first thing that we need to include is our header file. So I'm going to say include random.h, and again, make sure that you have this inside of quotations, and we need to have it inside of quotes and not the angle brackets because we did create this file. It's not inside of the standard library. Alright, and then we just need to include two files that are inside of the standard library. The first is stdlib because both rand and srand are inside of there. So we need to say include stdlib.h and include time.h so that we have access to that time function for setting up the seed for our random number generator. Alright, so now we've included everything that we need so we can begin actually creating our functions. So let me just go ahead and copy this prototype up here, paste it down here, and create the body. Alright, so this function is pretty simple. All that we need to do inside of this function is basically just set up the seed for a random number generator. So I'm going to call the srand function to set up the seed, and then I'm just going to go ahead and pass through time of null and end the line. So again, all that this time function does is basically just returns the time on our computer down to milliseconds, and that right there is just going to be the seed for our random number generator. Alright, so pretty simple. Now the next function that we're going to be creating is just random number right here. So again, I'm just going to copy the prototype and paste it inside of my code file. Alright, so to generate a random number in between min and max, what I'm going to do is say max minus equals min, and then I'm just going to say return rand, so just a random number, modulus max plus min. Alright, so I know that this is kind of confusing, but basically all that it's going to do is just generate a random number in between min and max. And now let me just go ahead and walk you through this code so that you have a better understanding of what it's actually doing. Alright, so let me just open up Paint right here. And let's say that someone calls this function. They pass through 2 as the minimum, so I'm going to say min equals 2, and they pass through 10 as the maximum, so I'm going to say max equals 10. Alright, so the first instruction right here just says max minus equals min. So it basically just subtracts the minimum from the maximum and then just stores the result inside of max. So we're just going to say max minus 2 since minimum is 2, and as a result we just get 8. Alright, so now the new value for max is 8 right here, so let me just go ahead and erase all this and make the value for maximum 8. So I just need to finish erasing and make this 8 right there. Alright, so now the next thing that it does is it just generates a random number. So we'll say that the random number that it generates is 4,674. Alright, and then what it does is it just divides this random number by the maximum and then returns the remainder. So it does modulus max, which is 8, so modulus 8, and then it just adds min to that. But first, let's go ahead and see what this is right here. So I'm just going to go over to my calculator, and in order to do modulus, you're going to have to go ahead and change the view to scientific. So if you're on standard, just go up to view, scientific, and then we're just going to type in this number right here. So 4,674. And again, we're just saying that this is the number that the random number generator generated. Alright, and then we're just going to do mod 8. Alright, and we get 2. So I'm just going to put a 2 right here. Alright, so after this operation, we'll say we get a 2, and then all that we have to do left is just add the minimum to it. So plus 2 right here, since the minimum is 2, and we get 4. And then it just returns this value. So return 4. Alright, so basically, all that this code is going to do is just ensure that we get a random number in between minimum and maximum. Alright, so now let's just go ahead and create our last function, and the last function that we have to create is just random string. Alright, paste it down there and just create the function body. Alright, so the first thing that we need to do is just create a character set, and then we're going to be generating a random number that is going to be some index of that character set. That way we can just use that random index to get a random character from our character set. So I'm just going to say carstar carset, and I'll just set it equal to all the characters of the alphabet and numbers. So I'm just going to say all the lowercase letters of the alphabet. Alright, so now what you need to do is just basically loop through all the characters inside of the string that the caller wants us to fill with random characters. So I'm going to say for int I equals 0 while I is less than rand car count and then I++. Alright, so we're basically just going to say the character at the index of I equals a random character, and to generate a random character we're going to say carset at a random index. And to generate a random index we can go ahead and use this function right here that we just created. So we can say random number, and the minimum is going to be 0 since the minimum index for any array is 0, and then we're just going to go ahead and make the maximum 36 since there are 36 characters inside of this character array right here. Alright, so basically what this is going to do is just go through all of the characters inside of this string that the caller wants us to fill with random characters and make them a random character. So let me just go ahead and walk through this code right here so that you understand what's going on. So let me just go ahead and delete this. Alright, so now let's say that the user passes through some string as this, and they pass through 4 as the random car count. So I'm going to say random car count equals 4, and then let me just go ahead and create a 4-character string right here. So let's draw a box to signify that we have a string, and inside here are just 4 characters, so I'll just divide it 4 ways. Alright, so here's the character at the index of 0, the character at the index of 1, the character at the index of 2, and 3. So basically what it does right here is it just creates our character set and then comes down here and says int I equals 0, and then we're just accessing the character at the index of I, and I is equal to 0, so we're looking at this character right here. So I'll just draw an arrow like that. Alright, then what it's going to do is just generate a random index inside of this character right here. So we'll say that the random index that this function generates is 4. Alright, so now it just goes inside of this character set and goes to the character at the index of 4. So it says 1, 2, 3, 4. And the character at the index of 4 happens to be a T. So then what it does is it just sets the character at the index of I inside of this string equal to T. So we're looking at this character right here, so it just sets it equal to T. Alright, then what it does is it just increments I, so I is now equal to 1. So we're now looking at the next character inside of this string. So we're looking at this character right here. Alright, and then it just generates another random index, so we'll say that it generates 16 this time as the random index, and then it just sets the character at the index of I inside of this string equal to the character that is at the index of 16 inside of this character set right here. So we just go to the character at the index of 16. So alright, so the character at the index of 16 inside of our character set is D. So it just goes right here and sets this character equal to D. And then it just keeps going and going until it fills these other ones up with random characters. So we'll say that it just generated, we'll say 7, and then it generated like 35, we'll say. So I don't know what character's at the index of 7, I guess I maybe, and then the last character in this character array is 0. Alright, so we'll say that this is just the random string that it generated, and then it just exits from the function. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we're going to be looking at testing our functions to make sure that they work. Alright, so see you guys.